The broadcast cut out so abruptly that viewers initially assumed it was a technical error. When a visibly pale royal correspondent appeared on screen, she delivered 11 words that sent a chill across both Britain and America. The palace had decided Meghan had no future within the monarchy. There was no negotiation, no softened language, no room for interpretation. Within seconds, newsroom phones were ringing off the hook, and commentators exchanged looks of disbelief. Even seasoned royal analysts, those who had witnessed Diana, abdications, and countless scandals, admitted they had never seen the palace exercise such absolute finality. And they were not alone. In living rooms across the UK, older viewers instinctively leaned forward, sensing that this was more than just another headline. Something fundamental had shifted, permanently. Only after the initial shock settled did a timeline begin to take shape. The announcement had been issued in the early winter hours, during a period of unusual internal strain. King Charles was in the hospital, weakened and unable to lead critical briefings, and the usual centre of royal authority had fallen silent. Whenever there is silence at the top of the crown, other forces begin to move. That movement came from two directions. Princess Anne, the steadfast backbone of royal protocol, had grown increasingly concerned about Meghan's lingering influence in the public imagination. To Anne, leaving the possibility of a royal return open was not caution, it was chaos waiting to reignite. William, on the other hand, focused on the emotional cost. Every public appearance he made was overshadowed by the question, will Meghan ever come back? With his father too ill to anchor the monarchy, William understood that this uncertainty could not be allowed to stretch into the new year. Quietly, decisively, and together, the two of them combined evidence, precedent, public opinion, and institutional necessity into a single winter briefing that would shape the message the palace ultimately released. This brings us to the question lingering in every viewer's mind. What exactly pushed the palace to make such a final decision, and why now? The truth behind the announcement is far more complicated, emotional, and consequential than anyone watching that broadcast could have imagined. To understand how the palace reached such a severe and irreversible conclusion, we must step back into the weeks leading up to the announcement, weeks shaped not by dramatic outbursts, but by a slow tightening of circumstances around King Charles and the institution he leads. His hospitalization created a vacuum the monarchy had not experienced in decades. With doctors monitoring him closely and engagements cancelled, the delicate machinery of royal authority was forced to operate in an unprecedented silence. Indefinitely, the king was no longer the steady anchor guiding daily decisions. Briefings were shortened, paperwork trimmed, and every discussion about the monarchy's future carried an unspoken weight. What would happen if Charles could not return to full strength? Within this uncertainty, the question of Meghan's future long deferred in the hope that time might soften tensions resurfaced with new urgency. Royal advisors had noticed a troubling pattern. Each time Meghan launched a new project or made a public appearance, global media pulled the monarchy back into narratives it was desperate to leave behind. American talk shows debated the crown's morality, British tabloids rekindled old resentments, and international outlets revived conflicts the institution had hoped to bury. With Charles ill, the palace no longer had the buffer of a strong monarch to absorb the fallout. William watched all of this with growing concern. He had spent years preparing to become the stabilizing force of the monarchy, yet no preparation could ease the shock of stepping into that role prematurely. What troubled him most was not Meghan herself, but the ripple effect she caused. Her name alone was enough to sway public sentiment and reignite debates the monarchy had long tried to contain. Meghan's presence overshadowed charitable work and disrupted carefully managed communication strategies. Princess Anne approached the issue from a different perspective. Less concerned with media drama, she was more focused on protocol. To her, every story suggesting Meghan might one day return eroded the credibility of the working royals, the ones who rose before dawn, travelled across the country, braved the cold, and carried out their duties without complaint. Allowing speculation to continue, in Anne's view, was an insult to the structure she had spent her life safeguarding. Advisors agreed. The monarchy could no longer afford ambiguity, not with Charles weakened, not with succession looming ever larger, and not with the public demanding clarity about who truly represents the crown. In a quiet meeting held in a private room within the hospital complex, William and Anne made their recommendation. The palace must close the door completely and publicly. That decision marked the moment when the path toward the December 3rd announcement truly began. Signs of change had appeared long before the formal announcement, subtle at first. then increasingly impossible to ignore, and the first to detect these shifts was Princess Anne. She had always possessed a keen sense for instability within the monarchy. Princess Anne didn't wait for problems to explode. She sensed their tremors long before others heard the rumble. It began with a series of quiet reports sent to her office, routine summaries of public sentiment, charity visibility, and international press coverage that were normally uneventful. This time, however, a pattern emerged. Every metric involving Meghan reflected a widening divide between the UK and the US. In Britain, particularly among older citizens, Meghan's approval ratings lingered at the bottom of national surveys. People no longer spoke of her with disappointment, but with exhaustion, feeling she had taken too much from the monarchy and given little back. In the United States, the perception was more complex. Among American audiences over 50, Meghan was seen both as a symbol of independence and as a source of controversy. Daytime talk shows treated her as though she remained part of the royal framework, and magazines continued using her Duchess title in bold, glossy letters. Every move she made, whether a podcast hint, a business teaser, or a red carpet appearance, was framed through a royal lens. To Anne, this wasn't harmless media noise. It was erosion of boundaries, of clarity, and of the monarchy's identity. Meanwhile, another series of reports landed on William's desk, detailing internal confusion among foreign partners who didn't understand Meghan's current status. Several global organizations planning charity summits asked whether she could still be considered royally affiliated. A few even assumed she might be returning to official duties, given how frequently American outlets referred to her with the Duchess title. For William, this was more than a minor inconvenience, it was dangerous. It muddled messaging at a time when Charles's illness demanded absolute clarity in the public's understanding of succession and stability. William had spent months trying to shield the monarchy from becoming a character in Meghan's narrative, but as her projects gained traction, the crown was increasingly drawn into her orbit. Again, the monarchy found itself being dragged into debates it hadn't initiated. The situation escalated with an unexpected request. A well-known European foundation, aiming to boost visibility for an upcoming campaign, inquired whether Meghan's participation could symbolically reconnect the modern monarchy with younger generations. Their language was careful, but their assumption was unmistakable in their eyes. The door to Meghan's royal involvement had never closed. That was the red flag. William brought the matter to the hospital, where Charles was convalescing. The king, tired but attentive, listened from his bed as William explained how Meghan's public image was creating a gravitational pull the monarchy could no longer counterbalance. Charles closed his eyes, absorbing the weight of the problem. His voice, weakened by treatment but still steady, said, "We cannot afford the world misunderstanding who speaks for the crown. Not now." Yet the strongest voice in the room belonged to Anne. She had spent days reviewing the dossier, compiling notes from charities, correspondence from ambassadors, media transcripts, and public polling data. She recognized a monarchy drifting into the orbit of someone who was no longer part of it. In her view, allowing this confusion to continue dishonored the sacrifices of every working royal. Then Anne spoke a single sentence that hung in the air like frost. "We must stop giving the world the illusion of a door that does not exist." That sentence changed everything. Far away in California, Harry could feel the tension rising even before the conversation had concluded. By the time the announcement approached, Harry had grown withdrawn and uneasy, friends later revealed. He sensed his father's health was deteriorating, recognized William stepping into a more assertive role, and felt Meghan's growing prominence in American media was reigniting a global conversation the palace was too fragile to withstand. Pieces were shifting, boundaries blurring, and a point of no return was approaching. By the end of November, William and Anne had reached their conclusion. The palace had to speak clearly, firmly, and finally. While Meghan continued building her public presence in America, the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace grew heavier by the day. Advisors moved briskly, whispered conversations lingered in hallways, and every department felt that a decision of unusual gravity was forming, one that would demand precision, unity, and the willingness to absorb inevitable blowback. The catalyst came in the form of winter press coverage that swept across the monarchy like a cold wind. British newspapers published back-to-back features questioning whether Meghan intended to relaunch herself into royal relevance, while American outlets speculated breathlessly about a potential reunion should Charles's condition worsen. Social media amplified both narratives, spilling them into the mainstream. To William, It felt like a slow-motion collision that he convened with communications officials in a small briefing room near the palace's administrative wing. Spread across the table were UK newspaper clippings with headlines reading Meghan's quiet path back, and is the monarchy preparing for a Sussex reset? William tapped one with the back of his pen, his expression unreadable. This is the problem, he said quietly. We have made no promises, yet the world keeps inventing them. Moments later, Princess and arrived, holding a separate folder of correspondence from international media. One letter from a Commonwealth charity asked whether Meghan might represent a modern branch of the institution at an event scheduled for the following year. Another came from a US media studio, asking whether a royal collaboration was off the table or simply on hold. This wasn't harmless optimism, it was dilution, a steady weakening of the monarchy's ability to define itself. If the world believed Meghan might return, the reality of who actually served the crown became blurred. She placed the folder in front of William. You see why waiting is no longer an option, she said. William nodded. The pressure had been building since summer, but now, with his father's illness leaving the institution without its central voice, he and bore the responsibility of guarding its future. Charles was still the king, but his role had shifted into something quieter, more reflective, and decisions that once passed across his desk now reached William first. Meanwhile, Camilla observed the unfolding situation with a mixture of weariness and concern. Though she avoided direct involvement in procedural matters, she had witnessed firsthand how public narratives could morph into lasting damage. Her own decades of experience with scrutiny had taught her that uncertainty is fertile ground for chaos. When she spoke privately with Charles about the growing attention around Meghan, her words were gentle but firm. The crown cannot survive in a world where its boundaries are optional. Back in the administrative wing, William and reviewed the final brief, a consolidated document outlining public confusion, international messaging risks, media misrepresentation, and potential consequences if the palace remained silent. Every department arrived at the same conclusion. Clarity must come from the institution itself. As the draft of the December 3rd statement took shape, one line stood out. There are no plans for future royal roles, patronages, or formal associations involving the Duchess of Sussex. It was a sentence that would define the announcement decisive, irreversible, and unambiguous. Before sending the document for final approval, William paused and looked at the communications director. This will shock the world, he said, but not speaking has become the greater risk. From outside the United Kingdom, the ripple effects of such stories were already remarkable, shaping conversations across oceans. Inside Buckingham Palace, preparations were complete. All that remained was to release the truth the world had speculated about for years. While the palace expected vigorous discussion following the December 3rd announcement, they did not anticipate how quickly the shock would spread once Meghan herself became aware of it long before the statement reached the public. Early that morning in California, Meghan's team intercepted the internal alert. The document was unmistakably official, stamped, formatted, and written in the unmistakable tone of Buckingham Palace legal counsel. Her strategist hesitated before handing her the tablet, as though the weight of the message might spill into the room before she even read it. Meghan scanned the first line, bracing herself for what she thought would be yet another routine update, only to realize the gravity of the news immediately. Meghan had expected another round of advisory clarifications, but her expression changed the moment she reached the core sentence. The institution has determined there will be no consideration of future royal roles or patronages involving the Duchess of Sussex. She froze. For years, Meghan had lived with the tension of her fraught relationship with the monarchy, but there had always been an unspoken understanding, a possibility, however small, that time might soften divisions, whether through a family event, a diplomatic necessity, or the simple passage of years. She had assumed some form of reconnection would remain open, not a return to royal life, but a bridge that still existed. This, however, was the palace burning the bridge until only ashes remained. Her voice was quiet at first. "They're shutting the door on me," she murmured to herself. Moments later, shock gave way to anger. They're doing this because they think they can get away with it while Charles is sick. Those around her remained silent, aware that the situation was far more complex. The decision had been months in the making, shaped by public sentiment, confusion over her status, and the monarchy's urgent need for clarity. But Meghan saw the timing as deliberate, ruthless, and deeply personal. Harry arrived shortly afterward, still half awake, and immediately sensed the tense atmosphere. When Meghan handed him the tablet, he read the statement with a long, steady breath. There was no surprise in his eyes, only resignation. "You knew this was coming," she said sharply. "I knew they were discussing possibilities," he replied carefully. "Not this. Not so final." Yet Harry understood what Meghan did not want to hear. The monarchy could not function without strict boundaries, especially with his father's health in decline. William and Anne were not acting out of spite, they were acting out of preservation. And while Harry still harbored bitterness toward the institution, the reality of the situation was impossible to ignore. Harry, despite his lingering frustration with the institution, recognized the logic behind William and Anne's move. He sat beside Meghan, rubbing his forehead. "This isn't about you," he said gently. "It's about stabilizing everything while my father is in the hospital." But Meghan shook her head. "It's always been about me. Every decision they make is about controlling the story. And now they're erasing the possibility of mine." Across the ocean, inside Buckingham Palace, tension was equally high. William and Anne had gathered in a secure meeting room to prepare for the public release. They knew the backlash would be fierce, that American media would erupt, and that the decision would be perceived as cold, even cruel. Yet they also understood what Meghan's supporters often overlooked. The monarchy survives only when its lines are unmistakable. William studied the final draft of the announcement. "We're not attacking her," he said quietly. "We're ending speculation." And, steady as stone, replied, "Speculation has caused more damage than truth ever could." Meanwhile, Meghan's team scrambled to formulate a response. Some urged restraint. Others pushed for a statement calling out the palace's timing, but Meghan remained silent. Her silence spoke louder than any press release could. What made the moment devastating was not the announcement itself, but what it symbolized. Not rejection, not punishment, but inevitability. The monarchy had chosen clarity, and clarity came at her expense. As noon approached in London, the palace pressed publish, and the world, already divided, braced for the fallout. The reaction was immediate, global, and more polarized than Buckingham officials had anticipated. Television networks cut into regular programming, radio hosts opened emergency call-in lines, and commentators flooded social media with interpretations, theories, and emotional reactions. Yet behind the noise, one reality remained undeniable. The palace had spoken, decisively, and the reverberations would be felt across continents. One fact emerged with perfect clarity. The monarchy had spoken, and it had spoken in a voice that allowed no negotiation. In the UK, reactions split sharply along generational lines. Older Britons, who had watched the monarchy weather decades of turbulence, felt the message was necessary. They had grown weary of Meghan's lingering influence, which seemed to shadow every royal initiative. To them, the December 3rd statement was not an act of cruelty, but a form of closure, a way to end the constant tug-of-war between duty and disruption. Many privately remarked, "At last, the crown is moving on." Younger audiences were more conflicted. Some viewed the palace as overly severe, while others argued that Meghan had long distanced herself from royal life, and the announcement merely confirmed what was already apparent. Even within this group, however, there was a sense of acceptance. This dramatic chapter had reached its inevitable conclusion. Across the Atlantic, the reaction was louder. American morning shows framed the news through the lens of independence and identity. Supporters of Meghan argued she was being punished for refusing to conform, while critics insisted she had repeatedly misused her title and public narrative. Older American viewers, especially those who had followed the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, and the memoir saga, were deeply invested, with many expressing sympathy for Meghan and others viewing the palace's decision as a stabilizing measure. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was quiet and almost fragile. Staff described the day as heavy but necessary. With Charles still in the hospital, the corridors felt colder than usual. William and Anne spent much of the afternoon briefing departments on the institution's new communication posture. No speculation, no ambiguity, no references to future reintegration. One senior aide remarked, "We've been living under the weight of uncertainty for years. Today gave us direction." Camilla remained out of the spotlight, but those close to her said she felt a mixture of sadness and relief. She understood the bitterness that public scrutiny could leave behind and anticipated that Meghan would interpret the decision as personal. Yet she also recognized the monarchy's need to reclaim space long consumed by endless speculation. Harry experienced the fallout in a far more personal way. He spent the day in emotional limbo, torn between protecting Meghan's feelings and acknowledging the logic behind the palace's move. Friends later said he walked for nearly an hour across the grounds of their Montecito home, phone in hand, unsure whether to call his father or remain silent. He knew Charles had not made this decision alone, and that tensions with William and had been approaching a breaking point for some time. Yet the reality was unavoidable. The door had closed. As the sun set over the horizon, the weight of finality settled on all involved. In London, the icy air settled around the palace rooftops, and it became clear that December 3rd would stand as one of the most defining days in the post-Elizabeth era, a day when the monarchy drew a boundary it could no longer afford to keep blurred. As the world digested the palace's unexpected declaration, a deeper truth began to emerge beneath the headlines and heated broadcasts. This was not just a royal update. It was a moment of cultural reflection, a mirror held up to Britain, America, and anyone watching a family navigate the impossible tension between public identity and private life. Within that reflection lay a lesson that felt strangely universal. For years, Meghan's story had been framed as a collision between individual ambition and institutional tradition. She entered a system older than most nations, carrying hopes, visions, and wounds that did not neatly align with its structure. The monarchy, rigid, ceremonial, unyielding, responded in the only way it knows, by protecting its form before its feelings. In many ways, this mirrors debates in political spheres on both sides of the Atlantic. British lawmakers speak of preserving national identity, while American leaders emphasize defending personal freedom. These two philosophies had collided within Meghan's story long before the palace ever issued a word. To the British public, especially older citizens, the monarchy is heritage, not entertainment. To Americans, Meghan is not a duchess, but a woman standing against a system. When two cultures value two different truths, conflict becomes inevitable. Yet what stands out most is not the conflict itself, but the cost of letting misunderstanding fester until decisive action becomes unavoidable. The palace's announcement did not emerge from a single documentary, interview, or headline. It came after years of mixed messages had piled so high that the institution could no longer see over them. Leadership, whether in a monarchy, a business, or a family, teaches that ambiguity can be more destructive than confrontation. As one British commentator put it, a crown cannot serve two interpretations. An American analyst added, a woman cannot carry two identities that contradict each other. Both statements were true, yet they missed a deeper point. Attempting to live in two worlds without fully belonging to either eventually tears a person apart. Timing also matters. When someone in power weakens and uncertainty spreads, decisive people rise. William and were not acting from vengeance, they acted from duty, and duty, especially under vulnerability, sharpens its edge. Leadership in moments of strain often demands choices that hurt individuals, but strengthen the whole. Harry's position, caught between love and lineage, navigating a storm he did not create, but cannot escape, reflects a universal truth. When two worlds you care about collide, silence becomes both refuge and prison. Healing cannot begin until expectation is replaced with acceptance, and acceptance cannot come until clarity arrives, even when clarity feels like loss. For Meghan, her future is no longer bound to the palace. Perhaps that is where her next chapter begins. The door that closed today may feel devastating, but sometimes painful clarity frees us from waiting for something that will never return. The question is no longer whether she has a place in the monarchy, but whether she can build a future that does not need one. Observing this unfold reveals a larger conversation about legacy versus reinvention, structure versus individuality, tradition versus modern storytelling. These tensions appear not only in royal families, but in marriages, workplaces, political systems, and friendships. We all face moments when we must choose which version of ourselves to honor. This story reminds us that identity is not granted. It is earned, protected, and reshaped by choices made when no one is clapping. Meghan has reached such a moment. The palace has too. The world is watching the consequences unfold on a grand stage. Where this story goes next is uncertain, but uncertainty is the birthplace of reinvention. Sometimes, the only path forward begins at the very moment a door finally closes behind us.